This is about recording in progress. This is about servant leadership, RTEs, and SAFE. This presentation, this webinar is really going to be about some of the skills that are more like people skills, personal skills, if you will, that help the RTE enable the flow of value in an agile release train inside a value stream in the scaled agile framework. So I'm Ray Angelone. You can reach me at ray@agilesparks.com, and I'll be your webinar presenter today. So let's start at the why, using the notion from Simon Sinek. You know, why do we even talk about Agile these days? Agile is, as many Agile coaches have said and written about, it's easy to understand and hard to master. I think that was Jeff Sutherland that said that when you think about Scrum. So yet we need to do it. And one of the reasons we need to do it is this acronym that comes out of the military, I believe, in the US here, known as VUCA. And it stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. We are in an age, I will offer to you, that it is highly volatile. Things are changing at a rapid speed, and the rate of change is even increasing. There's a lot of uncertainty about what to do and how to do things in this age of volatility, and in this age of complexity, where things are getting more and more complex. More and more things come together with more and more interactions, making it harder and harder to predict cause and effect. Complex systems operate like that. And then it's hazy as to, what are the real facts? What are the real signals from what we're seeing in the market or from customers? That's known as VUCA. On the other hand, it's amazing. It's astounding, the pace of change and breakthroughs. And here's just 4, like off the top of my head, areas where we see such amazing breakthroughs. Medicine. I was speaking to a surgeon recently who said that the rate of medical knowledge is doubling some crazy amount of time, like every few months, I think he said. And things that were incurable just a few years ago now are showing breakthrough signs. Same with energy. Just yesterday, we heard about breakthroughs in fusion reaction, which could unlock an virtually unlimited amount of clean energy within decades or a decade. Transportation with self-driving autonomous vehicles, completely unimaginable 20 years ago. Now it's quite regular. Even driver-assisted cars are coming into the average market now. And of course, computing, not only just all the amazing things, all the amazing toolkits, all the amazing capabilities of data science, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, but there's also a very near-term horizon, perhaps, in quantum computing, which will have a vastly incredible effect on how things are, that would have taken even months or years to compute now will take seconds. So it's exciting times as well. But it's also a little bit terrifying if you think about this from a business perspective or a government perspective or a nonprofit perspective. How do we keep up with all of these things? And here's a quote from Rupert Murdoch, actually. And he says, it's no longer about the big eating the small, but the fast beating the slow. So some upstart can test out new technology and come into your market way before a big company, which is slow to move, can do that and thus steal the market from them. And we know many of the killer bees out there. We often talk about the Borders, the Blackberries from Research in Motion, or Blockbuster, Borders, and Research in Motion. All leaders in their field, and yet relegated to the sidelines or gone. So how does that happen? It happens from complacency and lack of maybe willingness to see the signals and to make changes. In any case, if they do see the signals and make changes, their processes might be so big and slow that they're unable to make a change. Buckminster Fuller, who is a great I believe he was at Harvard and a scientist, and he created many things like the geodesic domes that you may see at Epcot or somewhere like that. And he made this observation that for most of human history, if you were alive in the, say, 1500s, it was pretty much like it was in the 1400s, which was pretty much like it was in the 1300s. And he noted that, however he was measuring knowledge, that it doubled roughly every 100 years. Not that dramatic. But then starting in the 1800s with some of these breakthroughs on the right, and this was just kind of a random list of brain droppings, inspired from other blogs and books as well, about some of the main innovations along the way. And most of those were linear. On the bottom, you can't really see it, but those are centuries along the bottom. So when we got around 1800, things started to turn up exponential. And if you look at this list, the things that really have made the biggest difference, more than half of the list is in the last 100 or 150 years. And now we're on to some crazy things like fusion and CRISPR, where somebody's, I'm not a medical person, but their DNA or whatever it is can be edited to eliminate a disease or symptoms of disease. So things are moving ever faster. And on the other side of Fuller's knowledge curve was this notion that I picked up from a book called Future Shock by Alvin Toffler. And he said the illiterate of the 21st century, remember this was written in 1970, won't be the ones who can't read and write, but those who cannot learn and unlearn and relearn. And I have to tell you, as a 54-year-old that almost ran aground a couple times in his career, that's the key. Learn, unlearn, relearn new techniques, and it keeps us employable, and it keeps us from being automated away because we keep learning. So the half-life of knowledge is what he was talking about there. Useful knowledge decays pretty quickly, and then as new knowledge is created. So how do we keep up with that? Well, this is inspired by something called the Stacy diagram. And the Stacy diagram says that on the two dimensions here, it's really, it's not an X versus Y chart so much as just two dimensions. That on the bottom dimension, we have certainty in how to build something. And on the other dimension, we have certainty in what to build. And when we have high certainty, and my graph is labeled incorrectly, I labeled it opposite. High certainty and high certainty in what to build and how to build it, it leads to simple processes. So you just can use waterfall. It's very easy. But when we have uncertainty that is high, that's the other way I could have done this. So either I could have fixed the axes, or I should have said uncertainty, like it says over here. But when uncertainty is high in what to build or how to build it, that's where the more adaptive processes are useful. And adaptive processes for planning and executing are like Scrum or Kanban. And down here, this is more predictive. So forgive my typo there, but that's the Stacy diagram. And thinking about using Agile and Kanban, we can use it especially in building complex systems. Complex systems are ones where they've never been built before, and their inputs and outputs are not necessarily easy to discern. So your first thing to do when you're encountering a complex system is try to think about ways to divide it up and make it simpler. If you can make it simpler, then you can start with a Scrum team or two. And then as you need, you can add more coordination or more practices to manage the complexity of it. But some are already very big, and they're going to start out very big. I don't think an Agile team is likely to build an airplane or something as complex as a storage system, for example, anytime soon. And that's where the Scaled Agile framework comes in. According to the latest 16th State of Agile report, safe adoption is now up to 53% among respondents. It seems to be the guerrilla process among organizations who are trying to do agility at scale or be agile at scale. RTEs in particular, along with SPCs, know what it is, and they know that it's built on 10 SAFE principles, 12 agile manifestos, and supported by the 4 core SAFE values of SAFE. Built-in quality, alignment, transparency, and program execution. And then the 4 agile manifesto values. So the Agile Manifesto, being around since 2001, is still an incredibly relevant body of knowledge. But built on that is, and complementary to that, is the SAFE set of principles and values. Most folks that have dipped their toes in SAFE understand that it's not about SAFE and it's not about doing SAFE or doing Agile, but it's about business agility and the results that it brings, or mission agility, if you're a nonprofit or a government. And that it has these 4 main dimensions where you can see impact, time to market, or responsiveness, how fast you can get something to market, whether it's a new feature or it's a major bug patch from a day 1 bug that you just found or was just found. Or impacts to quality. By shifting quality left and building quality in, we can reduce the failure demand, if you will, of defects and issues. We know from Lean that every step that a defect escapes, it costs more like 10 times more than it would have in the previous step. So building quality in is a core value for SAFE. Increased productivity, as you may measure in the volume of things going through the system and getting to done with quality over a unit time, like throughput. It's a good way to think about productivity. Throughput of what in SAFE? It would be features or stories at the team level. And when the process is going well and people are not in perpetual overload and they can see the impact of their work, then engagement tends to go up. That's employee engagement. And when customers tend to ask for something and then are delighted to get it really fast, customer satisfaction goes up as well. So these are the true benefits that lead to, business agility outcomes. RTEs and SPCs are in positions to coach these things. They know how to do it. They know how to determine value streams. They know how to figure out agile release trains from those value streams. Whoops, I'm sorry. Do you have a question somebody asks? Move that over here. So they know how to do it. They're experts in that. They're deeply skilled. Why then is it so hard? Why do we find people clamoring for extra help when they know how to do these things? And I'll say that the things that usually get in the way are things like culture. Because you can know how to launch an agile release train, but if the culture isn't in the mindset of continuous experimentation or the facts are friendly, then it's going to be very difficult to bring a transparency value system like SAFE into place. It's not that you can't do it, it's just that it will be difficult. And that's what I'm going to talk about. Some of the skills that help us deal with these obstacles. These, if you will, softer skills. And people, because we're not talking about robots, we're talking about people. And people are excited about the future, but they're also scared about the change that may come along. And they may be a little bit apprehensive about losing their role or their position or whatever, maybe even their job when they hear about things like agile or SAFE. So we need to talk about some people skills. And when you get down to it, the only real person that we can change is our very own self. So we're going to look at people skills from our own point of view. No matter how much somebody else may bother us, we can't directly change them. We can only change how we interact with them and how our interactions feel to ourselves. That's all we can really change. From Ron Westrom, this is something we talk about in the implementing safe class especially. He noted there are 3 types of cultures out there when he was observing, I believe it was in a healthcare setting. And he came up with 3 types: bureaucratic, where it's very much into following rules. Maybe some governments are like this. Maybe some schools or some companies even are very rules-based. People know their role, they stick to their rules, and you might hear things like, well, that might not be my job, if they're just following rules. Pathological is one where maybe a narcissist is in charge. Maybe it's like The Devil Wears Prada, where Meryl Streep walks around in high heels and, the world has to bend to her will. And that's one where it might be a little bit more toxic and it's a little bit unsafe from a psychological perspective. On the other hand, he noted that there's something called generative. And in a generative culture, we have psychological safety. It's a positive environment. People are allowed to speak and not, belittled or humiliated because of it, even if the idea isn't fully baked. A lot of great ideas come from the riffs off of other people's ideas. So we're going to encounter these 3 types of cultures, and we're going to want to nudge the people along the way. And from this old but good book, one of the first, if I will say, work self-help books that I read way back, the authors, Dr. Rick and Dr. Rick, noted several types of people. Some are listed here and some I added, like zombies. And these are types that, by naming them, by naming the types that you may encounter and the cultures that they're in, you may then be able to recognize it. And if you can recognize it, you may be able to build some countermeasures towards it. Your own personal countermeasures I'm talking about in this case. And some of them are these basic skills like reflective listening, especially if somebody's coming at you as a sniper, somebody who just takes pot shots or a grenade, somebody who blows up on you after being quiet, and keeping our poise so that we can react without emotion. And this is easier said than done. But when you start to practice these things, we move into a state of, we know we want to get better at this skill, but we don't have it yet. But that's the first step. That's the first step to recognize, I need this skill and I want to get this skill. And maybe you didn't even know the skill existed and had a name, like powerful questions or reflective listening. So we can use these things. And there's a couple of my favorite go-to powerful questions, especially when somebody's bringing me a problem. I'll say, well, what did you try and what did you just learn? Or especially if they screw up and they made a big mistake and we had an outage for a little bit. Well, that's part of our postmortem to say, what are the lessons learned? So postmortems can help us there too. Or tell me more to keep people talking. And that if someone's complaining, they really need to find their own solution. So we can maybe use a little bit of, if I were so grand to think about it, as talk therapy at work to get our peers to recognize their own pit that they've dug themselves into, and maybe to think about ways out of it themselves. So those are some things to try. Keep your poise. Keep calm. Yes, a last technique that I'd like to add to the list here is sometimes, especially us more introverted people like myself, well, you may find yourself in front of a talker, and that talker might be going on 6 different topics or 6 levels deep in a topic that they've gone the wrong direction, or they're layering so many assumptions that you just need to stop them and back up. And so just a calm but firm, use the person's name, like Ray. Ray, I hear you. Okay, Ray. Ray, can I say this? And then you'll get their attention, and you may interrupt some of these degenerative types and maybe start to have a conversation instead of a monologue or a lecture that you were on the receiving end of. Nobody likes that, right? Sometimes we'll find that, safe implementations or agile implementations kind of start leadership has blessed it, if you will, or maybe funded it, but might not be leading it the way that it needs to be led, right? It's one of our core competencies in SAFE is lean agile leadership. And it's one of the key success factors, the level of engagement of leadership. But if you're the release train engineer, you might not be the VP that has the authority to make changes like seating plans in a big company. That's not easy to do. Or you might not be able to talk the VP of product management from injecting new work all of a sudden in the middle all the time. So instead, we need to kind of have empathy for our leaders and maybe coach them a little bit. How are we going to coach them if we don't understand them? And one thing in SAFE is this notion of empathy mapping. And it's not purely SAFE, but this picture comes from SAFE. And it's a kind of structured way to identify who we're empathizing with, what they're seeing, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what do they do, what are their pains and what are their gains. In other words, put ourselves in their shoe, right? So that we can, in their shoes, so that we can understand what they see and thus maybe help them understand what's needed to make an agile release train effective from a leadership perspective, and maybe get them interested in why they should do it. And that's kind of the trick is it's, I put it here as what's in it for me. What I mean is thinking from their perspective. Getting leadership involved will make the ability to make a change much, much more palatable. And one of the patterns that we talk about in the Scaled Agile framework is when we create the team that's working to enable agile release trains. We call that team the Lean Agile Center for Excellence, or the LACE. And one of the key patterns of that LACE, which is often overlooked, in my opinion, is that a C-level or an executive level or an SVP level person should be the product manager of that LACE, so that the right changes can be made from their point of view when they are responsible for product delivery and the sustainable delivery of value. So getting that person involved into the LACE will help bring about change. The LACE can make a series of changes and, of course, run experiments. If Agile is anything, it's an empirical, that is fact-based experimental process that's continuously improving. But it's only continuously improving if you connect the outcomes of your hypothesis back to the hypothesis itself. And that's built into SAFE as well. So continuous experimentation. What can make these experiments more palatable is making the changes smaller. Instead of saying, we're going to launch an agile release train and we're going to transform the entire organization, make it smaller. One of the things we advocate is to get a small group of people together, of leaders, and talk to them about what SAFE is so they understand it, and then recognize the problems and challenges that they're having, the things on the right. What would be the benefits of a lean agile system? What would be the obstacles to that change? Maybe it's the cost. Maybe it's the impact that you're worried about. Maybe you're worried if your organization can handle it. Two other questions we'll ask, well, what are the pluses of not changing? Is it fine where you are? If we buy the argument that we're in a world that is moving faster than ever before and we have to keep up with it, that might not be palatable, and it might feed into the danger of not changing, the complacency. So by breaking these bigger changes into smaller changes and putting it in the what's in it for me perspective of the stakeholders you're talking to, you can make these small experiments that are more palatable. And in this case, what I'm talking about, one of the patterns is, instead of saying we're going to do all this and we're going to change everything, let's just have a 2-day leading SAFE class. It's one of the things we advocate for when we're thinking about implementing SAFE. Just a 2-day leading SAFE class with the executives and their staff, so that they're informed enough that they can make a decision whether to go forward and where and how. Picking a space that has a right-sized problem, right-sized leadership, right-minded leadership, real agile teams, another pattern that is often overlooked before we scale. You can't scale crappy agile. So getting those things in place and the Leading Safe class will help leaders understand how to engage and how to lead such a transformation. And you can coach them as a release train engineer or SPC, using techniques like this. I mentioned it before. What is the only thing we can really control in the universe? And that's our own mind, our own self, our own skills, our own thoughts, our own actions, our own words. That's all we can really control. So how do we do that? We want to get better. We recognize that there's a bunch of things that we need to do. We need to get better at empathizing with leaders and making experiments and reflective listening and powerful questions and psychological safety, not to mention all the things inside SAFE, all the technical aspects of creating a flow-based system. How do we do it? Well, we think about 1,440, which is the magic number of minutes in a day. And you think of your minutes like you had a wallet. And if you opened your wallet and it was full of 1,440 minutes, you might have a budget how you want to spend that during the day. And yet most of us just keep swimming in what I heard called the infinity pools that are out there. Those endless emails, endless push notifications, endless opportunities to engage in a free trial or something. And there's just so much noise coming at us. And that's just the professional stuff. And then there's the cultural stuff coming at us. And then there's the news coming at us. So where do we want to spend the time? Or do we want to spend it just kind of without any thought whatsoever? Almost like if you had money, just throw it to the wind. It doesn't matter. Spend until it's gone. Don't worry. Well, time can be the same way. We can invest it, or we can waste it, or we can create a budget so that we can balance the things we need to do, we say we need to do, that we say we want to do. And so if without setting a goal and allocating some resources, in this case, I'm talking about time, then we can't move towards that goal. So this will help us do that. We pick a target, we budget time. If we're saying, I'd really like to get good at DevOps. I just want to understand what DevOps is. And we know there's a fantastic book out there called the DevOps Handbook. So I really want to get good at DevOps. It's easy to just buy the book, maybe, right? If you're lucky, you can afford to, and you just buy a book. And pretty soon you'll have a stack of books. And that would be like inventory, and that would be waste because you're not getting to it. And by the time you did get to it, it might be obsolete. So instead, maybe it would be worth allocating time every day, even if it's as small as 20 minutes a day to read something. 20 minutes a day will add up over time, and you'll pretty soon build your skill in that domain. I personally spend much more than that on a good day. I don't always, I fail to, but this is a way to do that. Allocate your time like you would your money, keep a budget, try small experiments like allocating 20 minutes just tomorrow or before bed, even better, without your phone, and start towards that goal. What else can help us? Some personal perspectives. A while ago, I came across this book called The 4 Agreements. And the 4 agreements, which will be on the next slide, are fantastic from a personal perspective. And they free you from the grief and bad feelings that can happen when you interact with people who are maybe not operating from the same set of principles that you are. And this notion of the growth mindset, which is inherent in the lean agile mindset in SAFE, this notion of changing not only your own words, but if you can get others who are stuck in a fixed mindset to change the way of their speaking, reframing. It's as simple as starting with, I'm not saying this will solve it, but as starting with, when you find yourself or someone else going, I can't do X because, or I could only do X if, then if what I meant to say is if you can change it to say, I can do X if, so it changes a no because to a yes if. And then, of course, listening skills, something that's kind of absent in this day of like a lot of, tweeting and shouting and all cap stuff that goes on. Working on our own emotional maturity and our own emotional quotient, if you will. I remember a mentor saying that, at the company I was working for, we hire for IQ, intelligence quotient, and we fire for EQ, emotional quotient. So how do we bring our emotional maturity up a notch? And we can do these things. These are skills that we can invest our time in to improve. I know many people have got training in giving feedback, but not many people, it seems, have been trained in receiving feedback. And that's a powerful skill as well. And by the way, it might even be a superpower, because when somebody comes at you hot and heavy with some feedback that they're, that's bottled up and now it's bursting out, or in a, traffic incident, or, somebody in a line in a supermarket or something, well, we can diffuse those things, hopefully, at least starting by a little bit of listening, instead of like somebody tells you something really bad and our brain fires off and the fight or flight kicks in, and pretty soon we're like shouting stuff we never would have imagined we would have shouted. So instead, if we can pause and say, okay, thank you for telling me that, right? That you just gave me feedback about my parking job. It's really bad. Thank you. I didn't realize that. I'll take that into consideration next time, or even I might even fix it now and maybe diffuse the situation altogether. Multiple perspectives means that let's first recognize that the lens you see the world out of is just your lens. It's the one lens you have. Others have their own lens. It's like the old elephant story of the blind men feeling it from different perspectives. Each one of them is right and each one of them is wrong. If you put it all together, then you might understand, aha, this is an animal that has a side like a wall and a leg like a tree trunk and a nose like a snake. And by holding multiple perspectives, we can get a broader point of view. And from that broader point of view, we will have a better vantage point than we did before, because we incorporated other people's perspectives as well. And that fits back to the other ones too. It fits back to listening. It fits back to accepting feedback. And maybe this last one on the list here is humility. That staying humble is an important thing for a leader like a release train engineer or an SPC, and of course, in life. Let's look at some of these. Here's the 4 agreements. Comes from this book that you can see the Amazon link here. And here are the 4 agreements. Number 1, don't make assumptions about what somebody else does, or about knowledge that you don't have and you're just using, hypotheticals. Don't make assumptions. I find that that's even like back to the silly traffic example. Somebody cuts you off. Well, you could trigger your road rage, or you could be like, you know what? Let me not assume that that person is just a jerk, and let me be humble about it. Maybe they actually have to go see their grandmother in a hurry, right? I don't know. But by changing your own narrative, you can change your reaction. And don't make assumptions helps avoid that. It also helps overreacting before you really understand what that person meant when they said such a thing or wrote such a thing in email. Always try your hardest. Some wisdom from maybe kindergarten. Always try your hardest and keep an impeccable word. Keep the gossip down and keep true to what you say you're going to do. And last but not least, don't take it personally. If that jerk cuts you off in traffic and he makes a gesture to you. Well, that's really him having a bad day. You are not required to take complicity in the insult. Right? You have to be complicit for an insult to stick. They're just words, they're just gestures. You have to derive insulted meaning from it. You don't have to do it. You don't have to take the bait. Dr. Carol Dweck wrote this book, Mindset. And in SAFE, we talk about the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. I remember my father always saying this quote, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. You're right. And that apparently came from Henry Ford originally. So try this rephrasing experiment. Next time you hear a no because, or you're feeling like I can't because, or try to shift it to something more positive and more growth oriented. Emotional maturity, hearing and accepting feedback without being able to trigger that fight or flight. Taking responsibility in the situation. Even if you're not directly responsible, you may recognize your contribution to a situation, and that's a power that will help you diffuse it or avoid it in the future. Mentioned don't taking the bait and pausing and try to see it from a third-party perspective. Try to float above the room and see you and the person you're about to have a discussion with, and maybe think about what that third-party observer might see and what those two people are caught in. Humor is a great way to diffuse a situation if you can do it, or to see the humor in it in your own self. Don't treat people like endpoints that are just absorbing your words. Stop and check in and reflect what they said, and don't steal the conversation from them. I learned about something, you may have learned yourself about it's called a conversational shift. When your friend comes to you and says, oh man, my son just got cut from the basketball team. And you use that opportunity to riff off and go, oh, my son played basketball too, but he's still playing. You just stole the conversation and you missed the chance for empathy and you missed the chance for connection. So using that to go, well, tell me more. I'm sorry to hear that. Tell me more. Or, yeah, I've been there too. And if you can't think of anything, just take a breath, do some breaths, do the little countdown, which, my parents used to tell me that as well. Count when you're angry, before you say something, count down from 10. That's amazing. This quote from Hamlet, from Shakespeare. I love this quote because it's a little bit of, it puts the power of you into the situation. Nothing is neither good nor bad, but only the thinking makes it so. Think about things that can go wrong in life. Your son gets cut from the basketball team. Well, yeah, it hurts. And over time, they may find their own way, but something good might come out of it. So that might just been the thing that they needed to change directions into another sport or another activity where they're even better at. It's not easy in the moment, but it's that perspective of like, okay, this is bad now, but I know something will come out later that's better. I mentioned giving and receiving feedback. I love this book because just the title says so much. I've mentioned before, instead of reacting when someone's giving you feedback or immediately turning on the attack and doing whataboutisms or, yeah, but you said, flipping it back on them as a defense mechanism, right? As a defense mechanism when people give us feedback. Well, try just saying thank you. Thanks. I appreciate your giving me that information, which I may not have because nobody can see their own blind spots. So thanks for the feedback. Giving feedback. One of the techniques I learned over the years was this thing called nonviolent communication. And all of these to me are still practices. Doesn't mean because I can write it, I'm perfect. I'm definitely not perfect. But when you use this, it allows you to change a what the author calls a silence or violence option, your two choices, most people feel, into a third option. You get to state your observations, your feelings, and your needs and your requests. And the key step to the request is you need to be able to accept if the other person doesn't accept your request. And again, you have to free yourself. Free yourself. Yep. Thank you for the feedback. All right. So change starts right where we are. Release train engineers. We know we're trying to bring a big change to an organization. But instead of getting frustrated and finding ourselves crashing against the wall, maybe we can change some of our tactics, our mindset, and our techniques, our own self, our own way of being to learn and grow, right? We can become something else. We can use the growth mindset. And we can lead and set an example. We can be an island of calm amid a storm. And that is another method to leadership. Be an example. Lead by doing. Walk the talk. Lastly, stay humble. A phrase that I heard somebody say a long time ago, and I keep trying to keep it with me, that we serve others, and that leads to a much more fulfilling engagement in work and in life when we think about service to others. We can learn and grow, especially when we're humble. We can admit what we didn't know. We can admit what we need to get better at. We can admit when we're wrong. We can forgive others. I remember as I grew up, that was one of the teachings, forgive others, but it actually frees yourself. When you forgive others, you no longer carry that baggage like a camel. We can hear what our blind spots are when we're humble, and we can learn from other people's perspectives. And that can make us a better person, better release train engineer, better SPC. Keep in touch, reach out, let me know what you like or didn't like. Ray@agilesparks.com, or of course on LinkedIn. That is all I had. Are there any questions? Well, thank you to everyone who joined. I'll wait another minute in case there's any questions. Okay. Thank you, everybody. And I guess that's the end. So carry on, everybody. Best to